Caleb Stone's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he dumped 15 years of savings into the dirt. Every coin he'd ever earned. Gone. The slave trader laughed like he'd witnessed a man lose his mind. Maybe he had. But Caleb couldn't tear his eyes from the small leather pouch around the oldest woman's neck, the Thunderbird symbol that had haunted his dreams for 14 years. He owed a debt to a dead woman. And today, God help him, he was going to start paying it back. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to my channel and follow this journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels across America. The auction block smelled like hell warmed over. Caleb Stone had come to Pueblo for fence wire. Nothing more. But the crowd near the old livery stable made him slow his horse, and the sound that followed made him stop dead. A woman screaming. Not in pain, in pure uncut rage. He pushed through the bodies, men in dusty coats, women pulling children close. Everyone gawking like this was entertainment. Then he saw them. 5 native women on a wooden platform, hands bound, faces bruised, dresses torn. But not one of them crying, not one begging. They stood like they were ready to burn the whole town down. I said, "Get your hands off her." The youngest one couldn't be more than 25, had somehow grabbed a chunk of wood and was swinging it despite the chains on her ankles. A man twice her size caught her arm and twisted until she dropped. The slave trader stepped forward, wiping spit from his face with a silk handkerchief. "Feisty little thing." He grinned at the crowd. "That's what I love about these Arapaho women. Spirit. Makes them worth more to the right buyer." Laughter. Caleb's stomach turned. The trader walked behind the women like they were horses at auction. 5 prime specimens, gentlemen. The young fighter there would make an excellent personal servant. More laughter. The quiet one tracks better than any scout. The mixed blood speaks English good as you or me. And this one, he grabbed the oldest woman's face, forced it toward the crowd. Medicine woman, knows healing herbs, all that Indian magic. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared ahead with eyes that had already seen the worst men could do. But something around her neck caught the light. Caleb's heart slammed to a stop. A small leather pouch, beaded in blue and white, and burned into the leather a Thunderbird. The same symbol on the pouch he'd carried for 14 years. The one given to him by a dying Arapaho woman who'd pulled him from a burning village and whispered, "Live, carry the shame, someone must remember." Caleb was moving before he knew it. "How much?" The trader squinted. "How much for what?" "All 5. Silence. Then someone behind him snorted, "You drunk, mister?" Caleb kept his eyes on the Thunderbird, on the woman wearing it, on the ghosts that had followed him every day since he'd stood frozen while soldiers slaughtered her people. "I asked you a question." The trader made a show of calculation. $1,400. The crowd murmured. 3 years' wages for most men. Caleb reached into his saddlebag, pulled out the leather pouch he'd been filling since the day he left the army. 15 years of saving for a future he didn't deserve. He upended it at the trader's feet. Silver hit dirt like rain on a tin roof. "Count it." The trader dropped to his knees. 4 minutes later, he looked up with something between respect and fear. $1,412. They're yours." 2 miles outside Pueblo, the oldest woman spoke first. "Stop." Caleb turned. She stood tall despite the dried blood on her face, the bruises purpling her jaw, the rope burns circling her wrists like bracelets. "You will untie us now." Not a request. A command. Caleb nodded and moved to the youngest one first, the fighter. Up close, her eyes blazed with enough anger to set the whole desert on fire. "Hold still. These knots. I don't need your help. You need someone with a knife." He cut the rope. "There." She pulled free without thanking him. He didn't expect her to. He moved down the line. The quiet one had rope burns scarred over old rope burns. She'd been tied before. The mixed blood watched him like she was memorizing every move for later. The nervous one shook so hard her teeth chattered. When he reached the oldest woman, she didn't hold out her hands. "You saw it." "Ma'am." "The medicine bag." Her eyes locked onto his. "That's why you bought us." Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out his own pouch. Smaller, more worn. Same Thunderbird. The woman's face changed, not softened, something deeper. "Where did you get that?" "A woman gave it to me. Arapaho, 14 years ago." "Where?" This was the moment. The confession he'd been running from for over a decade. "A village, 3 days north of Fort Lyon." His voice came out rough, broken. "The army told us it was a relocation. I was 19. Stupid. I believed them." He forced himself to keep looking at her. "It wasn't relocation. It was slaughter." The fighter stepped forward, fists clenched. "You were there. You killed." "Sarah." The oldest woman's voice cut like a blade. "Let him finish." Caleb swallowed hard. "I didn't pull a trigger. I just stood there, watched, did nothing while they murdered everyone." His hand tightened around the medicine bag. "When the shooting stopped, I found a woman crawling from a burning lodge, gut wound, dying. Nothing anyone could do." He could still see her face, still hear her voice. "She gave me this, told me to live, to carry the shame so someone would remember." He met the oldest woman's eyes. "Then she died in my arms." Silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. The quiet one spoke first, barely a whisper. "What did she look like?" Caleb closed his eyes. Gray hair, maybe 60. A scar on her left cheek, shaped like a crescent moon. He heard someone inhale sharply. "She called me something. A word I never understood." "Ni hu yu." He opened his eyes. The oldest woman was staring at him with an expression that could have been hatred or heartbreak or both. "It means, the one who carries shame." Her voice trembled for the first time. "The woman who gave you that bag was my grandmother, Mourning Dove. She stayed behind so the rest of us could escape." The world tilted. "Your grandmother saved my worthless life," Caleb said slowly, "while soldiers were murdering her family, while I stood there and did nothing." "Yes." "And I've been carrying her medicine bag for 14 years. "Yes." "And now I find you hanging from a slave auction wearing the same symbol." The woman Wren he'd learn later stepped closer. Close enough that he could see every bruise, every cut, every scar that marked her as a survivor. "My grandmother believed in signs," she said. "She believed the spirits send us people when we need them most." She poked him hard in the chest. "But I don't care about spirits right now. I don't care about your guilt or your redemption or your 14 years of shame." Her voice cracked. "I care about my son." Caleb felt his chest tighten. "Your son." 15 children. The words came out jagged, broken. 3 days ago, slavers hit our village, killed the men who fought back, captured the women to sell, and took 15 of our children." Behind her, the fighter Sarah made a sound like a wounded animal. "My daughter, Lily. She's 4 years old." Sarah's whole body shook. "She was picking wildflowers by the creek when they came. I watched them drag her away. She kept screaming 'Mama' over and over until one of them—" Her voice broke. "Until one of them hit her to make her stop." The quiet tracker stepped forward. Anna. Her face was calm, but her hands were shaking. "My twins, James and Joseph, 7 years old. They tried to fight." A ghost of pride flickered across her face. "2 little boys with sticks against men with rifles. They knocked Joseph unconscious. James wouldn't stop screaming his brother's name, so they tied them together and threw them in the wagon like sacks of grain." She paused. "My baby girl Mary was hiding in the storage pit. She was safe. But she heard her brothers screaming and ran out to help them. She's 5. The mixed-blood woman Margaret spoke next. Her English was precise, controlled, but underneath it, Caleb heard something ready to shatter. My son Thomas is 12, old enough to understand what was happening. He told his sister Rose to run to hide, that he'd find her later. Rose is 9. She wouldn't leave him. Margaret's jaw tightened. Thomas put himself between her and the slavers. They beat him until he couldn't stand. Rose was screaming so hard she couldn't breathe. The last thing I saw was Thomas crawling toward her with blood running down his face, still trying to protect her. Betty, the nervous one, started crying before she could speak. Samuel. The name came out as a sob. My baby. He's 2. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know why Mama isn't there. He doesn't know why strangers are carrying him. He just knows he's scared. She wrapped her arms around herself. He has this little blanket, blue with stars. He can't sleep without it. I keep thinking about him crying for that blanket and nobody caring, nobody even knowing what he needs. Caleb stood frozen. 15 children. 5 of them belonging to the women in front of him, ripped away from their mothers, thrown into wagons, carried toward a life of slavery or worse. And he'd just spent everything he had. How long? His voice came out hoarse. 3 days. Wren's hand went to her grandmother's medicine bag. We tracked them to Pueblo before we were captured ourselves. They're heading south toward Santa Fe. If we don't catch them in 10 days, they'll disappear into Mexico. We'll never find them. Caleb looked at his old horse, his empty money pouch, the 5 exhausted, beaten women in front of him. Then he looked at the Thunderbird in his hand. Morning Dove had told him to carry the shame. But maybe she'd meant something more. Maybe she'd known this day would come. Maybe she'd been preparing him for 14 years. My ranch is 6 miles from here, Caleb said. Food, water, horses, weapons. We leave at first light. Wren stared at him. You would do this for strangers, after what you just confessed. Ma'am, your grandmother pulled me out of hell and told me to live. He tucked the medicine bag back in his pocket. I don't think she meant just breathing. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes burning. I don't trust you. I will never trust you. You're a white man, and white men took my daughter. I know. If you betray us, I'll kill you myself. I know that too. But if you help me find Lily, her voice cracked. If you help me hold my baby girl again, I'll owe you a debt. And unlike you, I pay my debts fast. She walked past him without another word. Margaret fell into step beside Caleb as they moved out. You really gave everything you had. Every cent. You might die on this journey. Probably will. You'll have nothing left. Caleb pulled himself onto his horse and looked down at her. Ma'am, I've had nothing for 14 years. Just didn't know it until today. The ranch at Stillwater Creek wasn't much. A cabin, a barn, 3 old horses, a well that still worked. But in the corner of the barn, under a tarp covered in dust, Caleb had something else. He worked the lock on the old army chest and lifted the lid. 6 rifles, 2 boxes of ammunition, 4 hunting knives, field glasses, and a map of the territory he'd memorized during his years as a scout. I told myself I was keeping these for emergencies. He stood and faced the 5 women. This counts. Sarah grabbed a rifle first, checked the chamber, sighted down the barrel, nodded. My husband taught me, before your people killed him. Caleb had no answer for that. Anna took one next, then Margaret. Wren pressed a rifle into Betty's shaking hands. You will learn. For Samuel. Betty's fingers wrapped around the weapon like it was her son's hand. Wren took the last rifle and turned to Caleb. The slavers, how many? If they're smart, 8 to 10 men, armed, fast. They'll stick to the main trail through Levada Pass. And if they're not smart, then they'll be careless. Caleb spread the map on the table. That's what we're counting on. He traced the route with his finger. Pueblo to Santa Fe, 250 miles through the San Luis Valley. They've got wagons, which means they can't move faster than 30 miles a day. We travel light, push hard. We can gain ground. And when we catch them, Margaret asked, we're 6 against 10. We don't fight fair. Caleb looked at each of them. We scout. We find where they're keeping the children. We wait for the right moment, and we hit them so hard and fast they won't know what happened. Ren studied him with those dark, unreadable eyes. You've done this before. Tracked men, hunted them, sometimes killed them. He met her gaze, but never for a reason that mattered. This matters. Ren was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Food first, then sleep. We ride before dawn. The women moved into the cabin. Caleb heated beans and jerky, not much, but all he had. They ate in silence, 5 starving mothers shoveling food into their mouths without tasting it. When they finished, Ren stood. I need to tend my wounds. Basin in the back room, clean water, bandages in the chest. She walked away without thanking him. The others followed one by one until only Caleb and Sarah remained. Sarah stared at him across the dying fire. You said you watched while soldiers killed our people. Yes. Children too. Caleb's throat closed. He forced the word out. Yes. Sarah leaned forward. Firelight turned her face into shadow and blade. Then understand this. If we find my Lily dead... Her voice dropped to something barely human. I won't kill you because you killed her. I'll kill you because you know what it's like to watch children die and do nothing. And I want that knowledge eating you alive every step of this journey. She stood and walked away. Caleb sat alone staring at the embers. He deserved every word. Deserved worse. 14 years of nightmares hadn't been punishment enough for what he'd witnessed and failed to stop. But those 15 children didn't deserve to pay for his sins. He pulled out the medicine bag. The Thunderbird stared back at him, worn smooth by guilty fingers. I don't know if you can hear me, Morning Dove, he whispered. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna bring those children home or die trying. And if I die... He swallowed. Then maybe I'll finally deserve the life you gave me. An hour before dawn, Anna woke him. I found something. Caleb followed her outside. The sky was still black stars scattered like broken glass across the darkness. Anna knelt in the dirt near the corral, pointing at something Caleb couldn't see. There, you see... He crouched beside her, squinted, saw nothing but dirt and rocks. What am I looking at? Tracks. Old ones from yesterday. A wagon came through here heading south. Could be anyone. No. Anna's voice was certain. Look at the wheel marks. Deep on the left, shallow on the right. The wagon is loaded heavy on one side. So the slaver's wagon was the same. I watched it leave our village. She touched the track like she was reading words on a page. And here, small footprints. A child jumped down from the wagon, probably to relieve herself. Caleb's pulse quickened. You can tell all that from dirt. I can tell more. Anna stood. The child who jumped down was small, light. She landed on her toes first, then her heels. A girl, probably. And she was scared. How do you know she was scared? Anna looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Because she ran. 6 steps toward the trees before someone grabbed her. She pointed at a scuff mark in the dust. They dragged her back, but not before she dropped something. She held up her hand. A small blue button, the kind you'd find on a child's dress. Caleb stared at it. They came through here, yesterday. Yes, which means they're close, closer than we thought. Anna tucked the button into her pocket. We can catch them, but we have to move now. Caleb turned toward the cabin. Ren was already standing in the doorway, the other women behind her. They'd heard everything. You found a trail? Ren's voice was sharp with hope she was trying to hide. Anna nodded. Fresh, less than a day old. Sarah pushed past them all, already heading for the horses. Then what are we waiting for? My daughter is out there. Betty was crying again, but this time the tears looked different, not despair, something else. Samuel, she whispered. We're coming, baby. Mama's coming. Wren looked at Caleb. You said we leave at dawn. Plans change. He grabbed his rifle and headed for the barn. We leave now. Margaret was already saddling horses. Anna was checking the trail one more time, memorizing every detail. Sarah had her rifle loaded and ready. And Wren stood in the middle of it all, watching Caleb with an expression he couldn't quite read. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. The truth, not the speech about debts and guilt. Caleb stopped, turned, looked at this woman who had every reason to hate him, whose grandmother had saved his worthless life, whose son was somewhere in the darkness waiting for rescue. Because your grandmother told me to live, he said. And for 14 years I thought that meant just surviving, breathing, existing. He shook his head. But I was wrong. Living means doing something worth dying for. Those children, your son, that's worth dying for. Wren was silent for a long moment. Then she did something he didn't expect. She held out her hand. Then we ride together, Caleb Stone. Not as captor and captive, not as enemies, as people who have the same purpose. Caleb looked at her hand, at the rope burns on her wrist, at the Thunderbird medicine bag hanging against her chest. He took it. Her grip was strong, stronger than he expected from someone who'd been beaten and starved and hung from a slave auction not 24 hours ago. Together, he said. Sarah called from the corral. Are you two finished? My daughter's waiting. Wren released his hand and turned away, but not before Caleb saw something flicker across her face. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of something that could become trust. It was enough. For now, it was enough. They rode out while the stars were still bright, 6 shadows moving fast across the dark desert. Ahead of them, 10 armed men, 15 terrified children, and 200 miles of the most dangerous territory in the West. Behind them, nothing. Caleb had left everything at that auction block in Pueblo. His savings, his safety, his future. But for the first time in 14 years, he wasn't running away from his past. He was riding towards something worth fighting for. Anna led the way, reading tracks in the darkness, like other people read books. Sarah rode beside her rifle, ready eyes scanning every shadow for threats. Margaret and Betty followed, staying close, drawing strength from each other. And at the back, Caleb and Wren rode side by side in silence. Somewhere ahead, 15 children were crying for their mothers. Somewhere ahead, men who traded in human flesh were counting their profits. Somewhere ahead, a reckoning was coming, and Caleb Stone, the coward who'd stood frozen while a village burned, was finally ready to face it. The sun broke over the mountains like a wound splitting open, red and angry and full of heat. They had been riding for 6 hours without rest, and Caleb could feel the horses starting to flag beneath them. Anna raised her hand. Everyone stopped. What is it? Sarah pushed her horse forward, impatient. Why are we stopping? Anna didn't answer. She dismounted and knelt in the dirt, her fingers brushing the ground like she was reading something written in a language only she understood. Caleb watched her work. In the gray light of dawn, he could see how thin she was, how the bruises on her arms disappeared beneath her torn sleeves, how her hands trembled even as they moved with precision across the earth. They stopped here. Anna's voice was barely above a whisper. Maybe 4 hours ago. The children were let out of the wagon. Betty made a small sound. Samuel. Was he? I can't tell individual children apart from tracks. Anna stood and looked at her with something like gentleness. But I can tell you they were walking, not being carried, not being dragged, walking. That's good, Margaret said. That means they're not hurt, Not badly. It means they're scared but alive. Anna pointed south. They're heading for the pass. If we push hard, we can cut the distance in half by nightfall. Wren had been silent since they left the ranch. Now she spoke, her voice flat and hard. Then, we push hard. They rode. The desert swallowed them, whole miles of nothing but scrub brush and red rocks, and sky so blue it hurt to look at. Caleb kept his eyes on the horizon, scanning for dust clouds, for movement, for any sign of the men they were chasing. Sarah rode beside him for the first time since they'd left Pueblo. She didn't look at him when she spoke. You were Army. Yes. How long? 4 years. Scout Division. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, my husband was a scout too. For our people. Best tracker in 3 territories. Caleb didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. They shot him in the back. Sarah's voice didn't waver. He was running toward Lily when they caught him. He almost made it. 2 more steps and he would have had her in his arms. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be useful. She finally turned to look at him. You know how these men think, how they move, how they plan. So tell me, if you were them, where would you stop next? Caleb pulled the map from his saddlebag and studied it while they rode. There's a trading post about 30 miles south, Red Canyon Station, run by a man named Dutch Harrigan. He's been suspected of moving stolen goods and stolen people for years, but nobody's ever pinned anything on him. You think that's where they're headed? If they need supplies, yes. And if they've got 15 children to feed and water, they need supplies. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then that's where we go. It's not that simple. Dutch has men, lots of them, and he doesn't take kindly to strangers asking questions. I don't plan on asking questions. Sarah's hand went to the rifle across her saddle. I plan on getting answers. Caleb almost smiled. Almost. You remind me of someone. Who? Me. About 20 years ago, before I learned that charging in headfirst usually gets people killed. Sarah's eyes flashed. You think I'm being reckless. I think you're being a mother. Caleb looked at her steadily. And there's nothing more dangerous in this world than a mother whose child has been taken. But if we're going to get those kids back, we need to be smart. We need to be patient. We need to wait for the right moment. And if the right moment doesn't come, then we make one. Sarah studied him for a long time. Something shifted in her expression, not softening exactly, but something close to it. My husband would have liked you, she said finally. He was a fool for lost causes, too. She kicked her horse forward before Caleb could respond. By midday, the heat was brutal. They stopped in the shade of a rock outcropping to rest the horses and drink from their canteens. Betty sat apart from the others, clutching Samuel's blue button like a rosary. Caleb approached her carefully, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. Ma'am, you should eat something. Betty shook her head. I can't. You need your strength, for Samuel. At the sound of her son's name, Betty's face crumpled. He's so little, she whispered. He doesn't understand anything. He just knows Mama isn't there. He just knows he's scared and alone, and nobody's coming to help him. Caleb crouched beside her. Someone is coming. You're coming. And when you find him, you're going to need to be strong enough to carry him out of there. So eat. He pressed a piece of jerky into her hand. Betty looked at it like she'd forgotten what food was. How do you do it? She asked. Do what? Stay calm. Stay focused when everything inside you is screaming. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I spent 14 years running from the worst thing I ever did. Every day I woke up with that scream inside me. Every night I went to sleep with it. You learn to function around it. You learn to move forward even when every part of you wants to curl up and die. Betty looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. Does it ever stop the screaming? No. Caleb stood. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you find something that makes it quieter. Something worth fighting for. He nodded toward the other women. You found yours. Don't let the screaming make you forget that. He walked away before she could respond. Wren was standing at the edge of the outcropping, staring south toward the mountains. Caleb approached, but kept his distance. You should rest. I'll rest when my son is safe. You'll collapse before we get there if you don't take care of yourself. Wren turned to face him. The bruises on her face had darkened to purple and black, and there were deep shadows under her eyes. But her gaze was sharp as ever. You presume to tell me how to care for myself? I presume nothing, ma'am. I'm just stating facts. We've got 200 miles ahead of us and God knows how many armed men at the end of it. You're no good to your son dead. Wren's jaw tightened. For a moment, Caleb thought she was going to hit him. Instead, she laughed. Short and bitter, but a laugh nonetheless. My grandmother was right about you. Caleb blinked. What? She had a gift. Could see things others couldn't. Before she died, she told my mother that one day a man carrying shame would come to our family. A man who had done great wrong, but had the capacity for great right. Wren's eyes searched his face. She said we would know him by the Thunderbird he carried, and that when he came, we should not turn him away. Caleb felt something cold run down his spine. She said that, before she died, her last words to my mother told me when I was a girl. I never understood what it meant. Wren touched the medicine bag around her neck. Until yesterday. Caleb didn't know what to say. The idea that Morning Dove had known, had somehow seen this coming, made his head spin. I don't deserve... No, you don't. Wren's voice was hard. But deserve has nothing to do with it. My grandmother saw something in you worth saving. My son is in the hands of monsters, and you're the only person in 300 miles who knows how to fight those monsters. She stepped closer. So I don't care what you deserve. I care what you can do. I can bring your son home. Can you? Yes. Promise me. Caleb hesitated. Promises were dangerous things. Promises made in desperation were even more dangerous. But Wren was looking at him with eyes that had nothing left but this one hope, this one thread connecting her to a future where her son was safe in her arms. I promise, he said. I'll bring him home, or die trying. Wren nodded once. Then she walked past him toward the horses. Then let's ride. They pushed on through the afternoon heat. Anna kept finding signs, a broken branch here, a disturbed rock there, a patch of ground where wagon wheels had left their mark. The trail was getting fresher. They were gaining ground. By late afternoon, they could see the trading post in the distance. Red Canyon Station was exactly what Caleb remembered, a cluster of weathered buildings, huddled against the base of a red rock cliff, with a corral full of horses and a handful of armed men lounging on the porch. They stopped a mile out and dismounted behind a ridge. How do we do this? Margaret asked. Caleb studied the buildings through his field glasses. The main building is the trading post. Supplies whiskey, whatever else Dutch is peddling these days. The smaller building to the left is probably storage. The one on the right... He paused. That's where they'd keep people they don't want seen. The children. Betty's voice shook. Maybe. Or maybe they're in the wagons. Caleb scanned the corral. I count 4 wagons. 2 of them are covered. If the children are there, that's where they'd be. So we go in and get them. Sarah had her rifle ready. Now. We go in now, we die. Caleb lowered the glasses. There are at least 12 men down there. Probably more inside. We need a plan. Anna spoke up. I can get close without being seen. Circle around to the back, check the wagon, see if the children are there. Too dangerous. I've been captured before. Anna's voice was flat. I escaped. Twice. I know how to move without being seen. Caleb looked at her. There was something in her eyes, a darkness, a weight that told him she wasn't exaggerating. Captured by who? Comancheros. When I was 17. Anna's face didn't change. They held me for 2 years. I learned things. How they think. How they guard. How they get careless when they've had too much whiskey. Margaret put a hand on Anna's shoulder. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Anna shook off her hand. My children are down there. I will walk through fire to find them. Caleb studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, you scout. But you don't engage. You don't rescue. You just look and come back. Understood. Anna was already moving. Understood. She disappeared into the rocks like a ghost. The waiting was the hardest part. Caleb had learned that during his years as a scout, the terrible stillness before action, when every second stretched into an hour, and your mind filled with all the ways things could go wrong. Sarah paced like a caged animal. Betty sat with her eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. Margaret checked and rechecked her rifle. And Ren stood motionless, staring at the trading post like she could burn it down with her eyes. Tell me about your son. Ren didn't move. Why? Because we've got nothing to do but wait, and I'd rather hear about who we're saving than sit here imagining what those men are doing to them. Ren was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she began to speak. His name is Little Hawk, 8 years old. He's small for his age, takes after his father, who was lean and quick like a deer. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. He asks more questions than anyone I've ever known. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly? Why can't people fly? Why all day long? Sounds like a bright kid. Too bright sometimes. Gets him in trouble. Ren's voice softened. He wants to be a medicine man like me. He's already learning the plants, the prayers, the old stories. He has the gift. I can see it in him. The way he looks at the world, like he can see through to something deeper. He sounds like his mother. Ren looked at him sharply. But there was no mockery in Caleb's face, no false flattery, just a statement of fact. He is, she said finally. He is exactly like me, stubborn, curious, too brave for his own good. Her voice cracked. And right now, he's scared and alone, and wondering why his mother hasn't come for him. You're coming. Not fast enough. You'll get there. Caleb met her eyes. Whatever it takes, you'll get there. Before Ren could respond, a low whistle came from the rocks. Anna was back. She slid down beside them, breathing hard but controlled. The children are there, in the covered wagons, both of them. I counted. She swallowed. I counted 14. Caleb's stomach dropped. 14. There were 15. Anna's face went pale. I know. Who's missing? Could you tell? Anna shook her head. It was too dark, too crowded, but I saw. She stopped. Took a breath. I saw my boys, James and Joseph. They're alive. They're holding each other. Margaret grabbed her arm. Thomas rose. I think I saw Thomas, in the first wagon. He's hurt bandage on his head, but he was sitting up, awake. And Rose. Anna hesitated. I couldn't see everyone. There was a tarp. What about Lily? Sarah's voice was a knife. My daughter, 4 years old, brown hair, green dress. Anna's silence was answer enough. Sarah's face went white. No, she has to be there. She has to. She might be there. I couldn't see everyone. The wagons are covered. The light was bad. She has to be there. Sarah was shaking now, her whole body trembling with a terror that went beyond words. She has to be. She has to. Ren grabbed her shoulders. Sarah, listen to me. We don't know anything yet. Anna couldn't see everyone. Lily could be in there. She probably is. And if she's not, then we find out what happened, and we make them pay. Ren's voice was steel. But right now, we focus on the children we know are there. 14 children who need us, including yours. Sarah's breathing was ragged, but slowly, painfully, she nodded. Okay. What's the plan? Caleb had been thinking while they talked. Running scenarios, looking for weaknesses. How many guards on the wagons? He asked Anna. 2. 1 on each. They're bored, careless, passing a bottle back and forth. And the main building. At least 8 inside, maybe more. They're drinking, playing cards, not expecting trouble. What about Dutch? Did you see him? Anna nodded. Big man, bald, scar across his nose. He was talking to someone, another man well-dressed riding boots. Looked like a buyer. Caleb's jaw tightened. They're already making deals. We have to move tonight, Margaret said, before they sell the children off. Agreed, but we can't take on 12 armed men head-on. Caleb pulled out the map and spread it on the ground. Here's what we do. Anna, you circle back to the wagons. Wait for my signal. When you hear it, you take out the guards and get the children out. Head north toward Crow's Pass. There's a ravine there where we can regroup. What signal? Caleb looked at Sarah. How good are you with that rifle? Good enough? Good enough to start a fire from 200 yards. Sarah's eyes narrowed, then understanding dawned. You want me to hit the whiskey barrels? Dutch keeps his stock in the storage building. If we hit the right barrel, the whole place goes up. Every man in that trading post will come running. And while they're distracted, Anna gets the children out. We cover her retreat. And by the time Dutch figures out what happened, we're gone. Margaret shook her head. That's a lot of ifs. What if the fire doesn't spread fast enough? What if they see Anna before she reaches the wagons? What if we sit here arguing until they sell our children to the highest bidder? Ren's voice cut through the doubt. There are no perfect plans. There's only action and consequence. We act now, or we lose them forever. She looked at Caleb. Tell us what to do. Caleb felt something shift in his chest. Not just trust, something deeper. Recognition. We wait for full dark. Anna moves first. Sarah takes position on the ridge. Margaret and Betty, you cover the north road. If any of Dutch's men try to circle around you, stop them. Ren, you're with me. Doing what? Getting our hands dirty. The sun began its slow descent toward the mountains. In the trading post below, men drank and laughed and counted money, unaware that 6 shadows were preparing to tear their world apart. Caleb checked his rifle, checked his pistol, checked the knife at his belt. Beside him, Ren did the same. Are you ready for this? He asked. Ren looked at him with eyes that held no fear, no doubt, no hesitation. I was ready the moment they took my son. Darkness fell over the desert like a shroud, and 5 mothers and 1 man who owed them everything began to move. The first shot split the night like a crack of thunder. Sarah's aim was true. The whiskey barrel exploded in a bloom of orange and gold flames, leaping toward the dry wooden walls of the storage building like hungry wolves. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then chaos. Men poured out of the main building, shouting, cursing, stumbling over each other in their rush toward the fire. Someone was screaming orders that nobody followed. Someone else was trying to form a bucket line from the well. And in the confusion and the noise and the dancing shadows cast by the growing inferno, Anna moved. Caleb watched her slip between the buildings like smoke. One moment she was beside him, the next she was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Now, he said to Ren, stay close. They ran. The back of the trading post was unguarded. Every man Dutch had was either fighting the fire or watching the ridge where Sarah's shot had come from. Caleb pressed himself against the wall and listened. Inside, he could hear a single voice, calm, controlled, giving orders that cut through the chaos like a blade. Leave the fire. It's a distraction. Get to the wagons. If we lose the cargo, we lose everything. Caleb's blood went cold. He knew that voice. "What is it?" Ren whispered. "The man inside. I know him." "Who?" Before Caleb could answer, the back door burst open. A man stepped out, rifle raised, and found himself face to face with Ren's knife at his throat. "Make a sound and you die," she said. The man's eyes went wide. He was young, barely 20, with fear written across his face like a confession. Please, I don't want any trouble. Where are the children?" "The wagons. Both of them, but they're moving them," now the boss said. "Who's your boss?" "Creed. Jonas Creed. He's inside. Ren's hand tightened on the knife. "Jonas Creed is here." The name hit Caleb like a fist to the gut. Jonas Creed. The man who'd led the massacre at the Arapaho village 14 years ago. The man who'd thrown Caleb into the fire when he'd tried to stop the killing. The man Caleb had spent every day since trying to forget. He was here, leading the slavers, still doing the same evil he'd been doing for 14 years. "Is he the one who attacked the village?" Caleb's voice came out hoarse. 3 days ago. The Arapaho village near Wind River. The young man nodded frantically. Yes, that was us. But I didn't hurt nobody, I swear. I just drive the wagon. Ren's knife moved so fast Caleb barely saw it. One moment the man was talking, the next he was on the ground clutching his throat, blood pouring between his fingers. "Ren! He helped take my son." Her voice was ice. "He doesn't get to beg." She stepped over the body and moved toward the door. Caleb followed, his mind still reeling. Jonas Creed. After all these years, after all the nightmares and the guilt and the running. The man who'd made him a coward was 50 feet away. Inside the trading post, chaos reigned. The fire had spread to the main building, now flames licking at the ceiling, smoke filling the air. Men were running in every direction, some toward the fire, some toward the wagons, some just running. And in the middle of it all stood Jonas Creed. He looked older than Caleb remembered, thicker around the middle, gray in his beard. But those eyes, those cold, dead eyes that had watched children burn without blinking, those hadn't changed. Creed was shouting at his men, pointing toward the wagons, when he turned and saw Caleb standing in the doorway. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Creed smiled. That same smile Caleb remembered from the burning village. The smile of a man who enjoyed what he did. Well, Caleb Stone. Creed's voice carried over the noise like it was made for giving orders in hell. Thought you were dead. Not yet. Heard you went soft. Bought yourself a ranch somewhere. Tried to forget what you were. Creed shook his head. But a man can't change his nature. I always knew you'd end up back in the game. I'm not here to play games. No. Creed's eyes flickered to Ren. You're here for the Indians. Of course you are. Still trying to make up for standing there like a coward while we cleaned out that village. He laughed. 14 years, and you're still carrying that guilt around like a sickness. Where are the children? Gone by now if my boys did their job. Creed raised his rifle. And you're about to be gone too. The shot came from behind Caleb. Not at him. At Creed. Margaret stood in the doorway, rifle smoking her face, a mask of fury. The bullet caught Creed in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped to one knee, cursing, blood spreading across his shirt. That's for my son, Margaret said. The next one's for my daughter. Creed's men were turning now, realizing the threat wasn't just the fire. Caleb counted 4 of them, all armed, all moving toward Margaret. Go, Caleb said to Ren. Find the wagons. Find your son. I'll hold them here. I won't leave you. Your son needs you more than I do. He met her eyes. Go, now. Ren hesitated for one heartbeat. Then she was gone, slipping through the smoke toward the back of the building. Caleb raised his rifle. Margaret, get down. She dropped just as the first shot whizzed over her head. Caleb returned fire, dropping one man, then another. The third ducked behind an overturned table. The fourth was trying to flank them, moving along the wall. "I see him," Margaret said. She fired. The man fell. That left one, and Creed still on his knees, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The last man made a break for the door. Caleb let him go. There were more important things to deal with. He walked toward Creed, rifle aimed at his head. "Where's the 15th child?" Creed laughed even through the pain. "15th boy, I don't keep count. They're all just cargo to me." "One of the children is missing, a little girl, 4 years old. Where is she? Could be anywhere by now, could be sold already, could be dead in a ditch." Creed's smile widened. "That's the thing about this business, Stone. You can't save them all. You never could." Caleb's finger tightened on the trigger. "Caleb?" Margaret's voice was sharp. "We need him alive. He knows where Lily is." Caleb's whole body was shaking. Every instinct screamed at him to pull the trigger, to end this man who had caused so much suffering, to finally balance the scales for what happened 14 years ago. But Margaret was right. He lowered the rifle. "You're going to tell us everything," he said. "Every buyer, every contact, every place you've ever sold a child. And then maybe I'll let you live long enough to hang." Creed spat blood at his feet. "You don't have the stomach for this, Stone. You never did." You'd be surprised what 14 years of guilt does to a man's stomach. Outside, gunfire erupted. Screams, shouts, the sound of horses. "The wagons," Margaret said. "We have to—" "Go, I'll handle him." Margaret ran. Caleb grabbed Creed by his wounded shoulder and dragged him toward the door, ignoring his screams of pain. The courtyard was chaos. One of the wagons was on fire. The other was moving horses' panicked driver, whipping them toward the open desert. Anna was running alongside it, trying to grab the reins. Betty was somewhere in the smoke, screaming Samuel's name. And Sarah was standing in the middle of it all, rifle raised, shooting at anyone who came near the burning wagon. "Lily!" she screamed. "Lily!" Caleb's heart dropped. The burning wagon, the one child they couldn't account for. He threw Creed to the ground and ran. The heat was unbearable. Flames engulfed the canvas cover, lighting up the night like a second sun. Caleb could hear children screaming inside, not many, maybe 2 or 3, and underneath it all, a small voice crying for her mother. "Lily, baby, I'm coming!" Sarah was trying to climb into the wagon, but the flames drove her back. Her hands were already blistered, her hair singed, and still she kept trying. Caleb grabbed her and pulled her away. "Let me go. My daughter is in there. Let me go." "You'll burn alive." "I don't care. She's my baby. She's—" Caleb didn't think. He just moved. He pulled his coat over his head and dove through the flames. The inside of the wagon was an inferno. Smoke so thick he couldn't breathe. Heat so intense it felt like his skin was melting. But somewhere in the darkness he could hear them. Children. Crying. Calling for help. He found the first one by touch, a small body huddled in the corner, too scared to move. He grabbed the child and pushed toward the back of the wagon, where the canvas hadn't caught yet. "Come on, move. We have to move." Another child. And another. 3 of them, all clinging to each other, all following him through the smoke. And then he heard it. A small voice. So quiet, he almost missed it. "Mama." "Lily. Lily, where are you?" "Here. I'm here. I can't move." Caleb pushed through the flames. His coat was burning now, fire eating through the fabric, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. He found her in the far corner, a tiny girl with brown hair and terrified green eyes, her leg trapped under a fallen crate. "I've got you." He lifted the crate and scooped her into his arms. "I've got you, sweetheart. Hold on to me. Don't let go." She wrapped her arms around his neck so tight he could barely breathe. He ran. The wagon collapsed behind him. As he dove through the flames, Lily clutched to his chest. He hit the ground hard, rolling, using his body to shield her from the impact. For a moment he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Everything hurt. Then Sarah was there, pulling Lily from his arms, sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. "Mama, Mama, I was so scared. I know, baby. I know. Mama's here. Mama's got you. You're safe now. You're safe." Caleb lay on his back staring at the stars, his whole body screaming in pain. His hands were burned. His coat was gone. He could smell his own singed hair. But Lily was alive. All 4 children from the burning wagon were alive. Wren appeared above him, her face lit by the dying flames. "Can you walk?" "Give me a minute." "We don't have a minute. The second wagon got away. Anna's tracking it. We have to move." Caleb forced himself to sit up. The world spun. He ignored it. "How many children in that wagon?" 10, including my son." Wren's voice cracked for the first time. "Including little Hawk." Caleb got to his feet. His legs felt like they were made of water, but he stayed upright. "Then we move." Betty came running out of the smoke, a small boy clutched in her arms. Samuel, alive, crying, but alive. "I found him," Betty sobbed. "He was hiding under the wagon. He was so scared, but he's okay. He's okay." She was laughing and crying at the same time, rocking her son like she'd never let go. Margaret emerged next, supporting one of her children, Thomas, his head still bandaged but walking. Rose was with them, clinging to her brother's hand. "Thomas saved her," Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. "They were in the burning wagon. He covered her with his body. She couldn't finish. Thomas, 12 years old, looked at his mother with eyes too old for his face. "I promised I'd protect her," he said. "I keep my promises." Caleb looked around. Sarah with Lily, Betty with Samuel, Margaret with Thomas and Rose. 4 children from the burning wagon, 3 others who'd been rescued from the second wagon before it escaped. 11. There had been 15. "Anna's twins," he said. "Mary, little Hawk. Where are they?" Wren's face answered before her words did. "The wagon. They're still in the wagon." Sarah's wagon, the one that had escaped into the night, was carrying 4 more children, including Wren's son, including Anna's 3. The job wasn't done. "We need horses," Caleb said. "Now." They found 3 horses in the corral. The others had scattered during the chaos. Not enough for everyone, but enough to chase. "Sarah, Betty, Margaret, stay here with the children. Find cover. Wait for us." Sarah started to protest, but Lily's arms around her neck stopped her. "Bring them back," she said instead. "Bring all of them back." Caleb mounted the first horse. Wren took the second. The third was for Anna, who materialized from the darkness, like she'd been born from it. "I know where they're going," Anna said. "There's a canyon 3 miles south, dead end. They'll have to stop there." "Then that's where we go." They rode. The night swallowed them whole, 3 shadows, chasing a wagon full of stolen children across the desert floor. Caleb pushed his horse harder than he should have, but he didn't care. Behind him, Wren rode in silence, her face a mask of determination. And Anna. Anna rode like a woman possessed, like nothing in heaven or hell could stop her from reaching her children. They found the wagon at the mouth of the canyon, just as Anna had predicted. It had stopped. The horses were spent, foam dripping from their mouths. The driver, a skinny man with a ratty beard, was trying to unhitch them, probably planning to ride one of them deeper into the canyon. He never got the chance. Anna's arrow caught him in the throat before he even knew they were there. He dropped without a sound. Caleb and Wren dismounted, weapons ready. There had to be more men. Guards. Someone. But the canyon was silent. "They're alone," Anna said, already moving toward the wagon. "The others must have scattered during the fire. Cowards." She pulled back the canvas and stopped. "Anna." Wren's voice was sharp. "Anna, what is it?" Anna didn't answer. She just stood there, frozen, staring into the darkness of the wagon. Caleb moved closer, close enough to see. 4 children huddled in the back. 2 boys. Twins, maybe 7 years old, holding each other. A small girl, 5 or 6, pressed against their side. And in the corner, a boy of 8 or 9, with dark hair and darker eyes, watching the adults with a wariness that no child should have. Little Hawk. It had to be. James. Anna's voice broke. Joseph. Mary. The twins looked up, their faces dirty, tear-streaked, terrified, transformed in an instant. Mama. Anna was in the wagon before Caleb could blink. She had all 3 of them in her arms, pulling them close, sobbing into their hair. My babies, I'm here. Mama's here. Wren pushed past Caleb. Her eyes were locked on the boy in the corner. Little Hawk. The boy looked at her. For a moment his face didn't change. Still wary, still closed off, still protecting himself the way children learn to protect themselves when the world has hurt them too many times. Then something cracked. Mom. The word came out small, broken, like he didn't quite believe it. I'm here. Wren's voice shook. I'm here, my son. I came for you. Little Hawk threw himself into her arms, and for the first time since Caleb had met her, Wren broke completely. She held her son like she was trying to absorb him back into her body, like she could protect him from everything that had happened just by holding on tight enough. Tears streamed down her face, washing clean tracks through the dirt and blood. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have been faster. I should have... You came. Little Hawk's voice was muffled against her chest. You came for me. I knew you would. I told the others. I said my mom would come. Caleb turned away, gave them their privacy. But something caught his eye at the bottom of the wagon. Something small, blue, a blanket with stars on it. Samuel's blanket, the one Betty said he couldn't sleep without. He picked it up and tucked it into his coat. One more thing to bring home. The ride back was slower. The horses were tired, and now they carried extra weight, 3 children on Anna's horse, 1 on Wren's the 4th with Caleb. Little Hawk sat in front of his mother, her arms wrapped around him like armor. He hadn't let go of her since she'd found him. Mom. Yes, my son. The man with the scar. The one who took us. Little Hawk's voice was steady, but Caleb could hear the fear underneath. He said you weren't coming. He said Indian mothers don't fight. He said you'd forget about us. Wren's arms tightened around him. What do you think now? Little Hawk was quiet for a moment. Then, I think he was wrong. Yes. Wren pressed a kiss to the top of his head. He was very wrong. They reached the trading post, what was left of it, as the first light of dawn began to paint the sky. The fire had burned itself out. Dutch Harrigan was long gone, fled into the desert with whatever men he had left. Jonas Creed was exactly where Caleb had left him, tied to a post bleeding and cursing. But none of that mattered. What mattered was Sarah running toward them, Lily on her hip. What mattered was Betty's cry of joy when she saw her son's blanket. What mattered was Margaret's tears when Anna's twins stumbled into her arms, alive and whole. 11 children. All 15 would have been better, but 11 were safe. 11 would go home to families who loved them. 11 would grow up to have children of their own someday, and they would tell the story of the night 5 mothers came for them with fire and fury. Caleb dismounted. His body screamed in protest, the burns on his hands, the smoke in his lungs, the exhaustion that went bone deep. But when he looked at the mothers holding their children, when he saw the tears and the smiles, and the fierce, unbreakable love, he felt something else. Something he hadn't felt in 14 years. Peace. Wren approached him, Little Hawk still attached to her side like a shadow. You kept your promise. Caleb shook his head. There are still 4 children missing, the ones who weren't in either wagon. We need to find out where Creed sent them. We will. Wren's hand touched his arm. But first, thank you, for my son, for all of them. Caleb looked at the boy. Little Hawk was watching him with those dark, knowing eyes. Your mom did the hard part, Caleb said. I just helped. Little Hawk shook his head. The others said you ran into the fire. They said you saved the children when the wagon was burning. It wasn't. My grandmother would have liked you. The words hit Caleb like a punch to the chest. She told me stories, Little Hawk continued, about a man who carried shame. She said one day he would come back and make things right. The boy looked at his mother, then back at Caleb. I think she meant you. Caleb couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Wren's hand was still on his arm, warm, steady. Come, she said. There's still work to do, 4 more children to find, and a man who needs to answer for what he's done. She nodded toward Creed, still tied to his post. But first, we rest. All of us. Caleb looked at the group around him. 5 mothers, 11 children, 1 killer waiting for justice. And somewhere out there, 4 more little ones who needed to be brought home. The sun rose over the mountains, washing the desert in gold. And for the first time in 14 years, Caleb Stone stood in the light. Jonas Creed laughed when they approached him. Blood had dried in streaks down his face, and his wounded shoulder had soaked his shirt crimson, but still he laughed. That same cold, empty sound Caleb remembered from 14 years ago. You think you've won something, Creed said. You haven't won anything. Those kids you pulled out of the wagons, there's a dozen more where they came from. 100 more. You can't stop this business, Stone. It's bigger than me. Bigger than you. Bigger than all your righteous fury. Caleb crouched in front of him. 4 children. Where are they? Creed's smile widened. What children? There were 15 taken from the village. We have 11. Where are the other 4? Could be anywhere by now. Could be on their way to Mexico. Could be sold to a mining operation in Nevada. Could be... Wren moved faster than Caleb could react. Her knife was at Creed's throat before he finished his sentence, pressing hard enough to draw a thin line of blood. My grandmother was mourning dove, she said, her voice low and deadly. She died saving a man from the fire you set. Her last words were about you, about the evil you would keep spreading. She knew you would never stop. Creed's smile faltered for the first time. I remember her, the old woman with the scar. She crawled out of that burning lodge like a... Wren's knife pressed deeper. Choose your next words carefully. Creed's eyes flickered to Caleb, looking for help, for mercy. He found neither. The 4 children, Caleb said. Last chance. Creed was quiet for a long moment. Blood trickled down his neck, pooling in the hollow of his collarbone. Finally, something in his face changed. Not surrender exactly. Something more like calculation. There's a buyer, a man named Preston Wells. Owns a ranch about 40 miles east of here. Big spread lots of cattle, needs workers. Creed's voice was flat now, businesslike. He takes the young ones, the ones who can be trained. I sent 4 children to him yesterday morning before you lot showed up. Names, Wren demanded. What were their names? I don't ask names. They're cargo, not people. Wren's hand trembled. Caleb could see how badly she wanted to end this man, how every fiber of her being was screaming for justice. But they needed him alive, at least until they knew everything. How many men does Wells have? 20, maybe 30. He runs that ranch like a fortress. Armed guards, dogs, the works. Creed's smile crept back. You got lucky here. You won't get lucky there. Caleb stood. We'll see about that. You're going to die. Creed called after him. All of you. And those 4 kids are going to spend the rest of their lives wishing they'd never been born. Sarah appeared behind Creed. Before anyone could stop her, she slammed the butt of her rifle into the back of his head. He slumped forward, unconscious. He talks too much, she said. Nobody disagreed. They gathered by the corral, the 5 mothers, 11 children, and Caleb. The sun was fully up now, and exhaustion weighed on all of them like stones. Margaret was the first to speak. We can't all go. The children need protection. They need to get somewhere safe. Agreed. Caleb pulled out his map and spread it on the ground. There's a settlement about 30 miles north. Good people. I've traded with them before. They'll take the children in, give them shelter until we come back. And who stays with them? Betty asked. She was still holding Samuel, refusing to put him down even for a moment. I can't leave him again. I can't. You don't have to. Caleb looked at her gently. You've done enough. You and Margaret should take the children north. Keep them safe. Margaret shook her head. My children are safe. There are 4 more who aren't. I'm going. Margaret? Thomas. She turned to her son, who was sitting with his sister, his bandaged head resting against her shoulder. Can you take care of Rose? Can you get her to the settlement and keep her safe until I come back? Thomas looked at his mother with those 2 old eyes. Yes, ma'am. I'm coming back. I promise you that. But right now, there are other children who need me. Rose started to cry. Don't go, Mama. Please don't go. Margaret knelt and pulled her daughter close. I have to baby. There are other little girls out there just like you who need someone to save them. Would you want me to leave them behind? Rose shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Then I have to go. But I'm coming back. I swear on my life I'm coming back. She held her children for a long moment. Then she stood, shouldered her rifle, and walked toward the horses. Betty stayed with the children. So did Anna, despite her protests. Your boys need you, Wren told her. They've been through enough. They need their mother, not another battle. Anna's jaw tightened. There are 4 children still out there. And we will bring them home. All 4. But James and Joseph. Wren touched Anna's shoulder. They need you more than we do. Anna looked at her twins. They were sitting close together, holding hands, watching her with eyes that begged her not to leave again. All right, she said finally, but you bring them back. Every single one. I will. They set out within the hour. 4 of them now. Caleb, Wren, Sarah, and Margaret riding hard toward the east. The Wells Ranch was 40 miles away. Half a day's ride if they pushed. Caleb pushed. They rode in silence for the first hour, each lost in their own thoughts. The desert stretched out before them, endless and unforgiving, and somewhere in that vastness were 4 children who didn't know help was coming. Sarah broke the silence first. How do you know this Wells? You spoke like you'd heard the name before. Caleb's jaw tightened. I know him. We served together in the army. He was efficient. Too efficient. The kind of man who follows orders without asking questions. And after the army, he bought land out here. Cheap land because nobody wanted it. Started ranching. But cattle don't make money fast enough for a man like Wells, so he found other ways. Slavery. He doesn't call it that. Calls them workers. Says he's giving them food, shelter, purpose. Caleb spat in the dirt. But I've seen his workers. Seen the look in their eyes. That's not purpose. That's the look of people who've had everything taken from them. Wren rode beside him close enough that their horses nearly touched. You knew all this, and you never did anything. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Caleb didn't flinch from it. I knew pieces, rumors. I told myself it wasn't my business, that I'd done enough damage trying to get involved in things that weren't my concern. He shook his head. I was wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things. And now I'm going to tear that ranch apart and bring those children home, and if Wells gets in my way, I'll put him in the ground. Wren was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You've changed. Since Pueblo. Maybe. No, not maybe. She looked at him with those dark, knowing eyes. The man who stood frozen while soldiers slaughtered my grandmother's village, that man would have run from this, would have told himself it wasn't his fight. But you're here. You're riding toward danger instead of away from it. Took me 14 years to figure out which direction I should be moving. Better late than never. Something passed between them. Not forgiveness, Caleb knew that would take longer, maybe forever. But something else. Respect maybe. Or the beginning of it. They reached the Wells Ranch as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. It was exactly as Creed had described a fortress. High walls, armed guards, dogs patrolling the perimeter. The main house sat in the center like a spider in its web, with outbuildings scattered around it. They stopped on a ridge overlooking the spread, staying low to avoid being spotted. 20 men at least, Margaret said, scanning the compound. Maybe more inside. The children will be in one of those outbuildings, Caleb said. Probably the one closest to the main house. Wells likes to keep his property close. Sarah was studying the guards' movements. They change shifts every 2 hours. Look, see how that pair is heading back toward the bunkhouse. Someone's coming to replace them. We wait for dark, Caleb said. Hit them during shift change. Maximum confusion. That's hours away. Wren's voice was tight with impatience. Those children have been here for at least a day. God knows what. I know. Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. But if we charge in now, we all die, and the children stay exactly where they are. We have to be smart about this. Wren looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. They waited. The hours stretched like taffy, each minute feeling like an eternity. Caleb used the time to study the compound, memorizing patrol routes, identifying weak points, planning and replanning their approach. Margaret cleaned her rifle. 3 times. Sarah sharpened her knife until it could split a hair. And Wren sat apart from the others, her grandmother's medicine bag clutched in her hands, her lips moving in silent prayer. Caleb approached her as the sun began to set. You doing all right? I'm praying. She didn't look up. Asking the spirits to guide us, to protect the children until we can reach them. I didn't know you were spiritual. I wasn't, not really. My grandmother tried to teach me, but I was young, foolish, thought I knew better. She finally looked at him. After she died after the massacre, I stopped believing in anything. What kind of spirits would let that happen? And now? Wren was quiet for a long moment. Now I have my son back. 11 children are safe because 5 mothers refused to give up. And I'm sitting here with a man who should be my enemy, but has become... She trailed off. Become what? I don't know yet. She stood tucking the medicine bag back into her shirt. But whatever you are, Caleb Stone, you're not what I expected. Darkness fell like a blanket over the desert. They moved. Caleb led the way, keeping to the shadows, moving from cover to cover. The others followed in a line. Wren, then Margaret, then Sarah. 4 shadows against the dark. The first guard never saw them coming. Margaret's knife found his throat before he could make a sound. Sarah caught the body and lowered it gently to the ground. The second guard was harder. He was alert, suspicious, his rifle at the ready. But Wren was faster. She appeared behind him like a ghost, her hand over his mouth, her blade in his kidney. For my grandmother, she whispered as he died. They reached the outbuilding Caleb had identified. It was locked from the outside, a heavy padlock that would take time to break. I've got it. Margaret produced a thin piece of wire from her pocket. Thomas taught me. Said every mother should know how to pick a lock. The lock clicked open in less than a minute. Inside the building was dark. It smelled like sweat and fear and unwashed bodies. Caleb lit a match. 4 small faces stared up at him. They were huddled together in the corner, wrists, bound, eyes wide with terror. The oldest couldn't have been more than 10. The youngest was maybe 5. It's all right, Caleb said softly. We're here to take you home. One of the children, a boy about 7, started to cry. They said no one was coming. They said we were alone forever. They lied. Wren stepped forward and knelt in front of them. I'm Wren. These are my friends. We came a long way to find you. Are you like us? The oldest child, a girl with braids, was staring at Wren's medicine bag. Arapaho. Yes. And these children? Wren looked back at Caleb. They're from my village. The other 4. The ones we couldn't find. The relief that flooded through Caleb was so intense he nearly staggered. All 15. They'd found all 15. "We need to move," Sarah said from the doorway. "Someone's going to notice the missing guards soon." Caleb cut the children's bonds, while Wren helped them to their feet. They were weak, hadn't been fed properly, but they could walk. "Stay close," Caleb told them. "Stay quiet. We're going to get you out of here." They made it halfway across the compound before the alarm went up. "Intruders! Intruders in the yard!" Dogs started barking. Lanterns flared to life. Men poured out of the bunkhouse, grabbing rifles, shouting orders. "Run!" Caleb shoved the children toward the wall. "Get them out! I'll hold them off!" Wren grabbed his arm. "You'll die." "Maybe." He pulled free. "But those children won't. Go!" He turned to face the oncoming men, rifle raised. The first shot dropped the lead runner. The second caught a man climbing out a window. The third went wide, but it made them scatter, gave the others precious seconds to escape. Caleb backed toward the wall, firing as he went. Bullets whizzed past his head. Something hot grazed his shoulder. He didn't stop. He reached the wall and turned to climb. A hand reached down Wren's hand and hauled him over. They hit the ground running. The horses were where they'd left them, hidden in a ravine half a mile from the ranch. The children were already there, Sarah and Margaret lifting them onto the saddles. "Go," Caleb shouted. "Go now." They rode. Behind them, the ranch erupted in chaos. Men on horses were pouring out of the gates, torches lighting up the night. Dogs were baying. Gunfire crackled in the darkness. But they had a head start. And Caleb knew this country. Every ravine, every hidden trail, every shortcut. They rode through the night without stopping. By dawn, they'd put 30 miles between themselves and the Wells Ranch. The children were exhausted, barely able to stay upright in the saddles. The adults weren't much better. But they were alive, all of them. All 15 children accounted for. They made camp in a sheltered canyon out of sight of any pursuit. Caleb collapsed against a rock, too tired to move. His shoulder was bleeding. The bullet had grazed deeper than he'd thought, but he couldn't muster the energy to care. Wren sat down beside him. "You're hurt." "I'll live." "Let me see." She pulled back his coat and examined the wound. Her hands were gentle, surprisingly so, as she cleaned the blood away and pressed a strip of cloth against it. "This needs proper bandaging." "We don't have proper anything." "Then this will have to do." She tied the cloth tight and sat back. "You could have died back there, staying behind like that." "Someone had to." "You didn't have to be the one." Caleb looked at her. "Yes, I did." Wren was quiet for a long moment. The first rays of sunlight were creeping into the canyon, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. "My grandmother was right about you," she said finally. "What do you mean?" "She said the man who carried shame would have the capacity for great right. I didn't understand what that meant. I thought it meant someone who would swoop in and save us like in the old stories." She shook her head. "But that's not what she meant at all." "What did she mean?" "She meant someone willing to burn himself to light the way for others." Wren reached out and touched the medicine bag in Caleb's pocket. "She saw that in you. Even in that burning village while you stood frozen with fear, she saw something worth saving." Caleb's throat tightened. "I wasn't worth saving. Not then." "Maybe not. But you became worth saving, and that's what matters." Wren's hand lingered on his chest. "The man you were died in that fire 14 years ago. The man you are now was born from his ashes." Caleb didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there were words for what he was feeling. So he said nothing. Just sat there as the sun rose, as the children slept, as the woman who had every reason to hate him instead offered him something that looked almost like grace. Sarah approached them an hour later. "We should move soon. Those men won't give up easily. Not with Wells's money behind them." Caleb nodded and pushed himself to his feet. His shoulder screamed in protest, but he ignored it. "We head north. Meet up with the others at the settlement. Then we figure out what comes next." "And Creed?" Margaret asked, joining them. "We left him tied to that post. Someone will have found him by now. Cut him loose. Then we deal with him too." Caleb's voice hardened. "He doesn't get to walk away from this. Not after everything he's done." Ren stood beside him. "First we get the children to safety. Then we deal with the monsters." "Agreed." They woke. The children gave them what food and water they had and mounted up. 15 children, all 15 alive, and headed home. Caleb looked back once at the canyon they were leaving behind. Somewhere out there, Wells was gathering men, planning pursuit, swearing revenge. Let him come. Caleb Stone had spent 14 years running from what he was, from what he'd done, from the shame that had followed him like a shadow. He was done running. Whatever came next, he would face it. For these children, for these mothers, for the dead grandmother who had looked at a terrified young soldier and seen something worth saving. The sun climbed higher as they rode north, and for the first time in 14 years, Caleb Stone rode toward his future instead of away from his past. They found the settlement 3 days later, nestled in a valley where a river cut through the rock like a silver ribbon. Betty was waiting at the edge of town, Samuel on her hip, her eyes scanning the horizon every few minutes. When she saw them coming, she screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was joy, pure, raw, uncontained joy. She ran toward them, still carrying Samuel, tears streaming down her face. "You found them. You found them all." The 4 children from the Wells Ranch were too exhausted to react at first. But when Betty reached them, when she pulled the youngest one into her arms and held her like she was her own, something broke loose. They started crying, all of them. The walls they'd built to survive came crashing down, and suddenly they were just children again. Lost, scared children who had finally been found. Anna emerged from one of the buildings, her twins trailing behind her. When she saw the 4 rescued children, she dropped to her knees. "All of them," she whispered. "You brought all of them back." "We promised," Ren said. Thomas and Rose came running out next, followed by the other children who had been left at the settlement. Within minutes, the street was filled with reunions. Mothers holding children, siblings clinging to each other. Tears and laughter mixing together like rain and sunlight. Caleb stood apart, watching. This was what he'd been fighting for. Not redemption, not absolution, but this. These moments. These families made whole again. Margaret approached him, her daughter Rose finally asleep in her arms. "Thank you," she said simply. "Don't thank me. Thank yourselves. I just helped." "You did more than help." Margaret's eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "You gave us a chance, when no one else would." She walked away before he could respond. One by one, the other mothers approached. Betty pressed a kiss to his cheek without saying a word. Anna shook his hand with a grip that said more than words ever could. Sarah stood in front of him for a long moment, Lily clutched tight in her arms. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. "No, you were right. I was a coward. I stood by while—" "That was before." Sarah cut him off. "I'm talking about now. About who you are now." She looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully against her shoulder. "You ran into a burning wagon for her. You could have died." "I didn't." "No, you didn't." Sarah's eyes met his. "My husband would have been proud to ride with you, Caleb Stone. And I don't say that lightly." She turned and walked toward the others, leaving Caleb alone with the weight of her words. Ren was the last to approach. Little Hawk was with her, holding her hand, watching Caleb with those dark, serious eyes that saw too much. "We need to talk," Ren said. "About what comes next." "Creed." "Yes. And Wells. And everyone else who profits from stealing children." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't over." "I know. But first—" She hesitated. Something vulnerable flickered across her face. First we bury our dead. We mourn what we've lost. We heal what can be healed. The village. What's left of it? Ren's hand tightened on her son's. My people need to rebuild. The children need stability, and I need to take them home. Caleb nodded slowly. He'd known this moment would come. The mission was over. The children were safe. There was no reason for him to stay. I understand, he said. I'll help you get there if you want. Make sure you arrive safely. Then I'll... No. Caleb blinked. No. Ren stepped closer. Close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her dark eyes, the way the setting sun caught the silver threads in her hair. You don't understand, she said. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm asking you to come with us. The words hung in the air between them. Come with you. To the village. To help us rebuild. Ren's voice softened. My grandmother saw something in you worth saving. I see it too now. But a man with that much capacity for good shouldn't wander the world alone. He should have a home, a purpose. I have a ranch. A ranch you spent every penny you had to leave behind. Ren's hand reached out and touched his chest right over his heart. You have nothing left in that life, Caleb. No money, no future, nothing but ghosts and guilt. And you're offering me what exactly? A chance to build something new, with people who understand what it means to start over. She looked at Little Hawk, then back at Caleb. My son needs to learn how to be strong, how to protect those he loves. I need someone to teach him, someone who knows what it costs to be a warrior and what it costs to stop being one. Little Hawk was watching him with an intensity that belied his age. Mom says you saved a lot of people, the boy said. She says you were scared but you did it anyway. That's true. I was scared too, when they took us, when they put us in the wagon. Little Hawk's voice trembled slightly. I didn't think anyone was coming. I thought we were alone forever. Caleb knelt down so he was eye level with the boy. You're not alone. You never were. Your mother crossed 200 miles of desert and fought through fire to find you. That's what family does. But you helped her. Yes. Why, you're not our family. The question hit Caleb harder than he expected. He looked at Ren, at Little Hawk, at the medicine bag still hanging around Ren's neck. Because a long time ago someone saved my life when I didn't deserve it. And I've been trying to figure out how to pay that debt ever since. He took a breath. Maybe this is how. Maybe helping your family is how I finally make things right. Little Hawk considered this for a long moment. Then he did something that stunned Caleb completely. He held out his hand. Then you should come with us, the boy said. Mom says you don't have a home anymore. We can share ours. Caleb looked at the small hand extended toward him, at the boy who had every reason to hate white men, but was offering friendship instead. At the mother watching them both with an expression that held equal parts hope and fear. He took the boy's hand. All right, he said. I'll come with you. Little Hawk smiled the first real smile Caleb had seen from him, and ran off to tell the other children. Ren stayed. You didn't have to say yes. I know. It won't be easy. My people don't trust outsiders. They'll look at you and see the soldiers who burned our village, who killed our elders, who I stood by and let do those things. Caleb nodded. I know, and they're right to be suspicious. I'll have to earn their trust the same way I earned yours. That took a burning wagon and 200 miles of desert. Then I'll do whatever it takes, however long it takes. Ren studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached up and removed the medicine bag from around her neck. My grandmother gave this to you once. She meant for you to carry it. She pressed it into his hands. Now I'm giving it to you again, not as a debt, not as a burden, but as a gift. Caleb stared at the small leather pouch. The Thunderbird stared back. I already have one. I know. Now you have two. One for the shame you carried, one for the redemption you earned. Ren's fingers lingered on his. They belong together, Just like us. Before Caleb could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the settlement. Riders coming, a lot of them. Caleb's hand went to his rifle. He pushed Ren toward the children. Get them inside, now. How many? I don't know, but whoever it is, they're not friendly. The mothers moved with practiced efficiency, herding the children into the largest building. Sarah grabbed her rifle and took position at a window. Margaret found a spot near the back door. Anna positioned herself where she could see both entrances. Caleb stepped out into the street. The riders were coming fast, at least 15 of them, kicking up dust that rose like smoke against the dying light. At the front rode a man Caleb recognized, Preston Wells. He was younger than Creed, but his eyes had the same deadness, the same emptiness of a man who had traded his soul for profit a long time ago. Stone? Wells reined his horse to a stop, his men fanning out behind him. You've got something that belongs to me. Those children don't belong to anyone, especially not you. I paid good money for them. Legal transaction. You stole my property. Children aren't property. Wells laughed. Out here, everything's property. Everything has a price, even you. He gestured to his men. 15 armed riders, one broken-down rancher with a guilty conscience. How do you think this ends? Same way it always ends when men like you think they can do whatever they want. Caleb raised his rifle. Badly. Wells's smile faded. You're outnumbered. Outgunned. You can't win this fight. Maybe not. The door behind Caleb creaked open. Ren stepped out, rifle in hand. Then Sarah. Then Margaret. Then Anna. But we're not fighting alone, Ren said. Betty emerged last, a pistol clutched in her trembling hands, but her eyes steady. You want those children? Betty said. You go through us. Wells looked at the 5 women, at the weapons in their hands, at the fire in their eyes. You're willing to die for some Indian brats that aren't even yours. They're all ours. Sarah's voice was steel. Every child who's ever been stolen, every family who's ever been ripped apart, they're all ours. Wells's jaw tightened. He was calculating odds, weighing risks. 15 armed men against 6 defenders, the math was in his favor. But there was something in the eyes of those 5 mothers that gave him pause. Something that said they would not stop, would not surrender, would fight until their last breath and then keep fighting. You're crazy, he said. All of you. Maybe. Caleb stepped forward. But we're crazy together. And I promise you this, you might kill some of us, maybe all of us, but we'll take enough of you with us that your little empire won't survive. Every man you lose tonight is a man who can't protect your ranch, who can't run your operation, who can't keep your secrets. Wells' eyes flickered to his men. Caleb could see the doubt starting to spread among them. They'd signed up for easy money, not a fight to the death. How many of them are willing to die for you, Wells? Caleb pressed. How many of them will charge into those rifles, knowing they might not walk away? One of the riders shifted uncomfortably. Then another. This ain't worth it, boss, someone muttered. There'll be other cargo. Shut up. He's right, though. We came for property, not a war. Wells's face contorted with rage. But even he could see his men losing their nerve. This isn't over. He said, his voice shaking with fury. You hear me, Stone? This isn't over. I'll burn that village to the ground. I'll hunt down every last one of those. The shot came from inside the building. Thomas stood in the doorway, his mother's rifle still smoking in his hands. His face was pale, but his hands were steady. The bullet caught Wells in the shoulder, almost the exact spot Caleb had been wounded. Not a killing shot, but enough to knock him from his horse. That's for putting me in a cage, Thomas said. The next one goes between your eyes. 12 years old, standing in a doorway with a rifle twice his size, staring down 15 armed men without flinching. Something broke in the riders. One by one they started pulling back. This ain't worth dying for, someone said, and the retreat became a rout. Within minutes, only Wells was left clutching his bleeding shoulder, his men disappearing into the dust. Caleb walked toward him slowly. You were saying something about burning villages? Wells's face was a mask of pain and hatred. "You think this changes anything? There are 100 men like me. 1,000. You can't stop—" Caleb's boot caught him in the jaw. Wells collapsed unconscious. "Maybe not," Caleb said, "but I can stop you." He turned to Thomas, who was still standing in the doorway, the rifle trembling slightly in his hands, now that the adrenaline was fading. "That was a hell of a shot." "He hurt my sister." Thomas's voice was quiet. "He hurt all of us. I couldn't let him do it again." Margaret pushed past Caleb and pulled her son into her arms. "I told you to stay inside." "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. I'm proud of you." She held him tight. "I'm so proud of you." They left the settlement 3 days later. Wells was turned over to the Territorial Marshal Creed II once they tracked him down. Both men would hang eventually. The law moved slowly out here, but it moved. The journey to Wind River took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of slow riding, of children healing, of families rebuilding bonds that had been stretched to breaking. Caleb rode beside Wren for most of it. They talked sometimes about the past, about the future, about nothing in particular. Other times they rode in comfortable silence, two people who had seen enough of each other's soul that words weren't always necessary. Little Hawk rode between them, asking his endless questions. Why do birds fly? How do horses know where to go? What makes the sky blue? Caleb answered what he could and admitted what he didn't know. The boy seemed to respect the honesty. When they finally reached the village, what was left of it, Caleb stopped at the edge. The destruction was worse than he'd imagined. Burned lodges, scattered belongings, the bones of a community that had been alive and thriving just 2 weeks ago. "This is what my people did," he said quietly. 14 years ago, and again, 3 days ago. Wren stopped beside him. "Yes. And you still want me here?" "What I want is to rebuild. What I want is for my son to grow up safe. What I want is for these children to have a future." She looked at him. "You can help with all of those things, if you're willing." Caleb looked at the ruins, at the children beginning to explore to reclaim their home, at the mothers already starting to sort through what could be salvaged. "I'm willing." The rebuilding started that day. Caleb worked alongside the Arapaho, doing whatever needed doing, hauling wood, digging foundations, learning skills he'd never needed on his lonely ranch. The work was hard, but it was honest, and for the first time in 14 years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. The people were wary of him at first. He expected that. He was a white man living among them, working beside them. There were looks, whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. Parents who pulled their children away. He didn't blame them. He just kept working. One day an elder approached him. An old man with white hair and a face like weathered leather. He watched Caleb work for a long time without speaking. Finally he said, "You carry shame." Caleb stopped. Set down the log he'd been hauling. "Yes. Morning Dove told us about you, before she died. She said a man carrying shame would come one day. She said we should not turn him away. What do you think?" The old man studied him with eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. "I think Morning Dove was wiser than all of us." He nodded once. "Welcome home, Caleb Stone." He walked away, leaving Caleb standing in the afternoon sun, something burning in his chest that he barely recognized. Hope. Months passed. The village rose from its ashes. New lodges, new gardens, new life. The children flourished. Thomas became something of a hero among the young ones, his story of facing down Preston Wells growing with each retelling. Rose followed him everywhere, her nightmares fading as the days grew longer. The twins were inseparable as always, but their laughter came easier now. Samuel learned to walk on the banks of the River Betty, never more than arm's reach away. And Little Hawk. Little Hawk became Caleb's shadow. The boy asked 100 questions a day, about horses, about tracking, about the stars, about what it meant to be brave. Caleb answered them all patiently, honestly, the way no one had ever answered his questions when he was young. "Were you scared?" Little Hawk asked one evening. They were sitting by the river watching the sunset. "When you ran into the fire, terrified. But you did it anyway." "Yes." "Why?" Caleb thought about it for a long moment. "Because there are some things more important than being scared. Some people worth fighting for, worth dying for." He looked at the boy. "Your mother, you, all those children. I looked at what could be lost and decided it was worth any risk to save it." Little Hawk nodded slowly, processing this. "Mom says you're going to stay with us forever. If you'll have me, I'll have you." The boy's hand found Caleb's, small fingers wrapping around rough ones. "I never had a father. Not really. He died before I could remember." Caleb's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "It's okay. Mom says he was brave like you." Little Hawk looked up at him with those dark, serious eyes. "Can I call you something not father? Something else?" "What did you have in mind?" The boy thought about it. The Thunderbird people believe that some men are chosen by the spirits, not born into families, but sent to them. They're called Ni-Hu-Yo, 3-Abi-He. What does that mean? The one who came through fire. Caleb couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Can I call you that?" Little Hawk asked. Ni-Hu-Yo, 3-Abi-He. "Yes," Caleb managed. "Yes, you can call me that." Little Hawk smiled that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his serious face and leaned against Caleb's shoulder. They sat there until the stars came out. That night, Wren found Caleb standing outside the lodge they now shared, staring at the sky. "He told you," she said. "The name?" "Yes." Caleb turned to face her. In the moonlight, she looked younger than her years. The bruises were long healed. The shadows under her eyes were gone. She looked like a woman who had fought through hell and come out the other side. "Your grandmother's medicine bag," he said. "The one you gave me. It's been burning against my chest all day, like it's alive." Wren smiled. "She's pleased. Her spirit. She approves of what you've become." "And what about you?" Wren stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath. "I watched you run into fire for my son. I watched you face down men who wanted to destroy us. I watched you work beside my people day after day, earning trust that no white man has ever earned before." Her hand came up to rest on his chest. "What do you think?" Caleb covered her hand with his own. "I think I spent 14 years running from who I was, and I found something better running toward you." Wren's eyes glistened. "My grandmother was right." "About what?" "About everything." She rose on her toes and kissed him soft and slow, a promise of things to come. "Welcome home, Caleb Stone. Welcome home." The next morning the village gathered. It was a ceremony. Caleb didn't fully understand words in Arapaho songs that rose toward the sky, smoke from sacred fires. But he understood the meaning. He was being accepted. Not as a visitor, not as an outsider, but as one of them. The elder who had welcomed him months ago placed a new medicine bag around his neck. This one was different from Mourning Dove's, larger, with different beadwork, but it bore the same symbol, the Thunderbird. "You came to us carrying shame," the elder said. "You have earned the right to carry something else." "What?" "Hope." Wren stood beside him, Little Hawk on her other side. Sarah was there with Lily on her hip. Betty held Samuel's hand. Margaret had her arms around Thomas and Rose. Anna's twins pressed close against her legs. 5 mothers, 15 children. One man who had found his purpose in their survival. Caleb looked out at the village he had helped rebuild, at the people who had become his family, at the woman whose grandmother's dying gift had led him here to this moment, to this life he never imagined he deserved. He thought about the burning village 14 years ago. The screams, the blood, the paralysis that had gripped him while others suffered. He thought about the slave market in Pueblo, the moment he'd seen the Thunderbird. The choice that had cost him everything he had and given him everything he needed. He thought about fire, about running toward it instead of away. And he understood finally what Morning Dove had meant when she'd told him to live. Not just to breathe, not just to survive, but to become something worthy of the life she'd saved. Wren took his hand. Little Hawk took the other. "Ready?" she asked. Caleb looked at her, at their son, at the home they'd built from ashes and hope. "I've been ready for 14 years," he said. "I just didn't know it." The drums began to play. The singing rose toward the endless sky. And Caleb Stone, the man who had carried shame, the one who came through fire, the one who finally found his way home, stood surrounded by love and knew that some debts cannot be paid with money. They can only be paid with a life well lived. Dear friend, there are some wounds that never fully heal, some mistakes that can never be undone, some darkness that follows us no matter how far we run. But there is also this: the human heart's capacity for redemption is infinite. Every day is a choice. Every moment is a chance to become someone better than we were before. Caleb Stone found his redemption in the most unlikely place, in the eyes of the people he had once stood by and watched suffer. He found it in fire and fury, in love and loss, in the simple act of showing up day after day and doing what was right. He found it in 5 mothers who refused to give up, in 15 children who taught him what courage really means, in one woman whose grandmother saw something in him worth saving even when he couldn't see it himself. Peace is not found. It is built day by day, choice by choice, wound by wound. And on that day in that village surrounded by the family, he never expected to have Caleb Stone finally stopped running. He was home. Thank you for being here today. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Leave a comment below and tell me, what does home mean to you? Until next time, may you find the courage to run toward what matters, and may you always find your way home.